Maryland, ranking Democrat of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, it's great to have you here. And you said the following: I don't think we should be voting for exceptions to this. We're going to have to draw a line and say we've got to deal with this in a comprehensive way. It's going to be tough. That's why it's going to require a united position and leadership. Do you stand by that even when you hear these stories about what's going on, for instance, with folks getting chemo at cancer clinics?
Well, Chris, I agree that we shouldn't have seniors having to travel long distances for their cancer drugs. I agree that we shouldn't have long lines at airports. I also agree that we shouldn't have 4 million fewer Meals on Wheels for seniors who are struggling. I also think we shouldn't have 70,000 kids kicked off Head Start. And the way we deal with that is to replace the sequester. And 4 times this year, 4 times, I've offered on behalf of my Democratic colleagues a bill to replace the sequester to achieve the same amount of deficit reduction without these disruptive consequences to people's lives and throughout the economy. And our Republican colleagues have refused to even allow us a vote on that. And in fact, this year, in this new Congress, 0 is the number of times they've actually proposed a replacement for the sequester. So we can help those seniors on chemotherapy, and we can help remove the other disruptive impacts of the sequester by replacing it. So let's move forward in a comprehensive way rather than piecemeal.
All right, so here is the question. What is the leverage here? What is the leverage, right? Republicans have a majority in the House. They actually like cuts to non-discretionary funding like this. They're quite happy with them. There's a few things here and there. Their flights are delayed. That congresswoman doesn't like the chemo disruptions, which I completely understand. What leverage does the White House have, do Senate Democrats have, and do you, as House Democrats, what leverage do you have to force their hand, particularly now that everybody's going to get home on their Friday afternoon flights out of the Capitol?
Well, that's right, Chris. Two points. One, it's important that everybody understand that we already did $1.2 trillion in real cuts to these parts of the budgets. That's already been done. So the sequester is on top of this. So the question is whether people like Senator McCain, Senator Lindsey Graham, who have real concerns, and understandably, with the very deep cuts on the military side, which are also across the board and are affecting military readiness, whether they will then say, look, we need to come together to replace the sequester, and we're willing to look at cuts in other areas of the budget. For example, I've proposed that we get rid of a lot of the excessive direct subsidies. But we've also said, and you started your program about the different polls showing different income groups' reaction, we've also said that people earning $2 million a year should pay the same effective tax rate as the people who work for them, the so-called Buffett rule. Because the way to deal with this in the long term is to reduce our deficit in a balanced way.
Let me ask you this question.
And our Republican colleagues don't want to do that. That has been a fundamental problem.
So you just mentioned the defense part of the cuts, right? The deal of the sequester was everyone's going to hate it because half the cuts come out of non-discretionary, half the come out of non-defense, non-discretionary, and discretionary, half of them come out of defense. Okay. But that hasn't proven to be the case. I mean, are you surprised by how little leverage the defense cuts have seemed to give Democrats to get out of the sequester?
Well, Chris, I think that the clock has continued to tick on this issue. It was never going to be the case that the day after the sequester took effect, the sky was going to fall. You're going to have this grinding effect. So, for example, we're hearing right now that mechanics who work on, our combat aircraft at military bases around the country may be furloughed as a result of this. People are going to start hearing more and more about that. So, do I wish that people came to their senses sooner? Absolutely. But I still think the pressure will build. And the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said the other issue is the silent job killer, 750,000 fewer American jobs at the end of this year if we keep the sequester in place. That's just not acceptable.
Congressman Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, thank you so much.
Thank you.